The jungle was alive, but not in a peaceful way. It whispered, rustled, and breathed like something waiting to strike. Commander Rayan moved slowly through the thick alien plants, his boots sinking into soft glowing moss. He had been exploring this strange world for 3 days, and nothing had tried to eat him until now. A sharp, high scream cut through the trees. Rayan froze, hand on his plasma knife. It wasn't a human scream, but it was full of pain, fear, and desperation. Then came another scream, shorter and more distant, like it was being dragged away. "Someone's in trouble," he whispered. He didn't think. He ran. The trees were tall, with wide twisting trunks and giant blue leaves. Strange insects buzzed in the air, glowing with soft light. Rayan pushed through vines and dodged thorny branches. He followed the sound, heart pounding in his chest. Then he saw it. In a clearing, a monstrous plant stood over 10 meters tall. Its body looked like a giant red flower, open wide like a hungry mouth. Its vines moved like snakes, fast and alive. One of them was wrapped tightly around a girl, lifting her into the air. She wasn't human. Her skin was smooth and light blue, her eyes wide and glowing silver. She kicked and struggled, but the vine only pulled her closer to the flower's mouth. Rayan watched in horror as the plant dropped her inside, and its petals closed shut. "No," he muttered. He ran forward, yelling, but it was too late. The girl was gone, swallowed whole. The plant shivered like it was enjoying the meal. Thick vines slithered around the base, guarding it like guards. At a gate, Rayan stopped at the edge of the clearing, breathing hard. His mind raced. Was she still alive? Could she be saved? He didn't know what kind of digestion this thing used, but if he waited, it would be over. He pulled out his blade and scanned the plant. Its skin was tough, green with thick pulsing veins. It had one weak spot, a glowing bulge near the base, just above the roots. "I have to cut her out," he said to himself. He moved quietly through the brush, staying low. The plant didn't seem to notice him, too busy digesting. Rayan crept behind it, sweat dripping down his face. He raised the blade and struck the glowing spot hard. The plant screamed. Not a sound, but a wave of noise, a deep vibration that rattled the ground. It sent vines flying in every direction, lashing at the air. Rayan ducked and rolled to the side as a vine whipped past his head. He struck again, cutting deep. Greenish fluid sprayed out, burning his sleeve. The plant's petals trembled. They began to open slowly. Inside was a thick layer of slime and something moving. Rayan rushed forward, ignoring the pain in his arm. He jumped onto one of the vines and climbed up toward the mouth. The petals opened just enough for him to see inside. There she was, trapped in a clear bubble, surrounded by thick, glowing liquid. Her eyes were closed, her hands limp. She wasn't dead, not yet. Rayan growled and slashed at the outer wall. It was tough, but his blade sparked against it. Cracks spread across the surface like broken glass. A final strike, and it burst. Slime poured out, and the girl tumbled into his arms. He nearly slipped from the vine, but held on. Vines came flying toward them like angry snakes. Rayan grabbed a sharp branch and swung, slicing through one of them. He jumped down with the girl in his arms. Landing hard, he ran through the trees, heart thudding, breath sharp and fast. Behind him, the plant howled again and sank into the ground, disappearing into the earth. Rayan didn't stop until he reached a small cave where his supplies were hidden. He laid the girl down on a blanket and checked her pulse. It was weak, but there. She was still alive. He cleaned the slime from her face and covered her with a heat blanket. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Her lips barely moved. She whispered something in a strange language, then fainted again. Rayan looked at her and shook his head. "What were you doing out there?" he asked softly. He had so many questions, but one thing was clear. This girl wasn't just any alien, and this jungle was more dangerous than he had ever imagined. He sat beside her, blade in hand, eyes watching the jungle. The real story was just beginning. Darkness surrounded her. But it wasn't the kind of darkness that felt empty. It pulsed, shifted, breathed. Alira could feel something thick and wet pressing against her skin, pulling at her clothes, her hair, her limbs. She tried to scream, but only bubbles came out, floating up and disappearing into glowing green slime. She wasn't dead, but she was dying slowly. Her body was inside the plant's stomach, wrapped in a transparent chamber that held her in place. Each time she moved, the walls tightened slightly, as if the creature was adjusting its grip. Pain burned across her arms where the acid had started to eat through her sleeves. She was trained for danger. She was a scout from a royal alien tribe, but nothing could prepare her for this. Being eaten alive wasn't part of the mission. She closed her eyes, trying to calm her heartbeat. If she panicked, she would lose oxygen faster. She tried to think of her training, the breathing techniques, the mental steps for survival. But her thoughts kept slipping away, her mind dizzy from the lack of air. The pressure was too strong, the slime too thick outside. The creature shook violently. She could feel it through the walls. Deep tremors, fast movements. Something had struck it, again and again. Then suddenly, the pod cracked, light stabbed into the chamber, sharp and golden. She blinked through the fluid, saw a shape, two glowing blue eyes, and a dark figure slicing through the wall. A warm hand reached in, grabbed her by the arm, and yanked her free. The air hit her face like fire, and she gasped hard, coughing out slime. Her vision blurred, her ears rang, and then she blacked out. She woke up to warmth. Her body was wrapped in thick blankets, and a strange, dry cloth was covering her eyes. She felt something moving beside her, a hand checking her pulse. Her skin still stung, but the pain was fading slowly. She opened her eyes just a little and saw him, the human, the one from the stories, the one her people didn't believe existed. He looked exhausted, his armor scratched, face dirty, but his eyes were kind, full of concern. "You're alive," he said quietly. She tried to sit up, but her body refused. He placed a hand on her shoulder and shook his head. "Don't move. You were nearly gone." He added. Alira blinked, trying to find the words. Her voice came out dry and cracked. "You ... saved me," she said. He nodded once. "I saw you taken. I couldn't walk away," he answered. She stared at him in silence. No one had ever done that for her before, not even in her own tribe. She was a scout, a tool, someone sent into danger while others watched. But this man, this outsider, this human, had jumped into a monster's mouth for her. She closed her eyes again, not to sleep, but to remember the mission, the goal, the crystal hidden deep in the jungle. It wasn't over. She needed to find it, or her world would fall into chaos. She had to survive. Even if every part of her body screamed in pain. Rayan sat by the cave wall, watching the entrance. He didn't know her name yet, or why she was alone in a deadly jungle, but he knew that kind of fear in her eyes, the look of someone running from something worse than monsters. He checked his blade, recharged his gear, and made sure the fire stayed lit. She would need rest, and he would make sure nothing came close again. The jungle outside was quiet now, too quiet. That plant hadn't attacked her by accident. It was placed there, waiting for someone like her. Rayan didn't believe in fate, but something was wrong with this world. He could feel it, and he had no idea what he had just stepped into. All he knew was that a blue-skinned alien girl was now alive because of him. And somehow she wasn't just another survivor. She was part of something much bigger. In the silence, she whispered her name, Alira. He looked at her, surprised. "I'm Rayan," he said back, two strangers from two different worlds, both caught in something they didn't yet understand, and the jungle, as always, was still watching. Rayan didn't sleep. He sat beside the alien girl, his plasma blade resting on his knee, watching the cave entrance as shadows moved quietly across the trees outside. Alira had fallen unconscious again, her body still weak from whatever was inside that monster, but her breathing was steady now, and color was returning to her blue skin. The jungle made soft noises like whispers from a dream, but Rayan had been a soldier too long to relax. Something about this place didn't feel natural, not just wild, but planned, like a trap designed with thought. He looked down at Alira and whispered, "What were you looking for in there?" Before long, morning light broke through the leaves, and the girl stirred. She opened her eyes, blinking slowly, then sat up with a groan. Rayan offered her water, which she drank shakily. Then she looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to measure him. "You shouldn't have saved me," she said softly. Rayan raised an eyebrow. "That's a strange way to say thank you." She shook her head. "You don't understand. That plant, it was meant for me." Rayan leaned forward. "You mean it was a trap?" "Yes," she answered. "My mission was to retrieve something from deep within this jungle, something sacred to my people. But someone doesn't want me to get there." Rayan frowned. "Someone tried to feed you to a 10-meter-tall meat-eating plant." "So yeah, I believe you." Alira smiled weakly at that, her eyes showing both pain and amusement. "The jungle isn't just dangerous," she continued. "It's controlled, twisted, changed by a force that bends life itself, turns nature into weapons. And you still want to go back in?" Rayan asked, surprised. "I have to," she said. "My people are on the edge of war, and the crystal buried in this jungle is the only thing that can stop it." He stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. "All right, I'll come with you." Alira blinked, confused. "Why would you help me?" "You owe me nothing," Rayan shrugged. "Maybe I'm curious. Maybe I don't like giant killer plants. Or maybe, just maybe, I don't want to see you get eaten a second time." She looked at him, and for the first time since he had saved her, she laughed. It was quiet, but it was real. They packed their supplies quickly. Rayan's gear was designed for long missions, and Alira had hidden tools in her suit, including a small energy scanner. She used it to guide them through the jungle, but the path wasn't safe. By midday, they had crossed a glowing river full of floating stones, fought off 2 flying leech creatures, and nearly fell into a pit of acid worms. Rayan was amazed by how calm Alira was during all of it, even in her weakened state. She moved like a trained scout, fast, focused, never wasting motion. Still, the jungle was watching. As they walked under thick red-leafed trees, Rayan noticed something strange. Vines curled slightly when Alira passed, but didn't move when he walked by. He tested it twice, pretending not to notice, but the pattern repeated. "They're tracking you," he whispered. "I know," she replied. "I think they can smell my blood." They stopped near a tall stone, half buried in moss. Alira touched a marking carved into it, glowing softly under her fingers. "It's a boundary," she said. "Beyond this point, the jungle becomes alive in ways you can't imagine." "Define alive," Rayan asked. "The trees don't just grow," she said. "They hunt." He stared at her, then looked ahead into the dense brush. The light seemed darker there, like the sun itself feared to shine inside. Alira took a breath and stepped forward. Rayan followed, one hand on his blade, the other ready to grab her if she fell. Not 10 steps in, the ground shifted. It wasn't an earthquake, it was something breathing beneath the soil. Before they could react, roots exploded from the dirt, wrapping around Alira's legs and yanking her backward. Rayan slashed fast, cutting 2 roots and pulling her free. But something huge was rising behind the trees, a beast made of bark and bone. Its eyes were glowing red, and its arms looked like broken branches, sharp as blades. Alira shouted a word in her language, and the stone behind them glowed bright. The beast hesitated, confused for a second. Rayan took the chance. He ran forward and drove his blade deep into its chest. The creature let out a silent roar, staggering backward and crashing into a tree, shattering it like glass. Rayan turned to Alira, breathing hard. She was on her knees, shaking. He helped her up and said, "You weren't kidding." "No," she said. And this was just the outer gate. Rayan looked ahead, where the jungle grew even darker. He nodded slowly. "Let's see what else is waiting for us." The jungle closed behind them. *. The rain came without warning. It wasn't like Earth's rain, this was heavier, thicker, almost oily. It slid down their armor, clinging to skin and gear like it didn't want to let go. Rayan and Alira found a small cave beneath a hanging root cluster, just big enough to hide from the storm. The jungle around them roared softly, not from wind, but from the strange life that seemed to grow louder after dark. The trees shifted slightly, like they were leaning in to listen. Rayan sat near the edge of the cave, blade in hand, while Alira sat farther back, arms wrapped around herself, silent. Neither had spoken much. Since the tree beast attack, Rayan had noticed it earlier, her steps getting slower, her face losing color. She was running on willpower, not strength. "You're not okay," Rayan said quietly, not looking at her. Alira didn't answer right away. Finally she whispered, "Every time I close my eyes, I feel it again. The plant, the slime, the sound of my breath going silent." Rayan turned toward her slowly. He didn't say anything, but his eyes showed that he understood. He had been a soldier for years. He'd seen men and women come back from less and fall apart harder. Alira had almost died in the worst way imaginable, and she hadn't even had time to process it. She leaned her head against the wall, eyes closing. "I can't afford fear," she said. "My people are counting on me, and I failed." "You didn't fail," Rayan said. "You're still breathing, still moving, still fighting. You didn't break." Alira opened her eyes, her gaze finding his. "Why do you care?" she asked, honestly confused. "You're not part of this, not from my world, not sworn to my mission." Rayan shrugged. "Maybe because I've seen too many people give up before they were really beaten. Or maybe because I think you're stronger than you believe." A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of the jungle shifting like a restless animal. Then Alira reached into her small satchel and pulled out a broken piece of crystal. It glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. "This was once part of the seed stone," she explained. "It's buried somewhere in the heart of this jungle. Legend says it can stop war by binding leaders to truth. They can't lie while in its presence." Rayan raised an eyebrow. "A truth crystal?" "More than that," Alira said. "It connects to something ancient, something that speaks across time and stars." "Sounds dangerous," Rayan muttered. "It is," she agreed. "That's why someone wants it buried, and why I was sent to find it." She stared at the glowing shard, eyes filled with both hope and doubt. Rayan noticed her hands were shaking slightly. He moved closer, sat down beside her, and offered a heat patch. She took it silently, pressing it to her chest, and let the warmth settle her breath. Outside, a soft sound echoed, a slow crackling hiss. Rayan stood, blade ready, and scanned the jungle. Alira stayed behind him, her energy drained but her instincts still sharp. From the trees came a figure, tall and thin, not fully alive. Its body was made of bark and wires, glowing lines running through its limbs like veins. A construct, not born but grown part machine, part nature. Rayan raised his blade. But the creature didn't attack. Instead, it placed something on the ground, a small sphere, and then vanished into the jungle mist. The sphere pulsed once, then opened. Inside was a hologram, an alien male with hard eyes and a voice like wind over stone. "Alira of the Veilburn," the message said. "Your survival is unexpected, but not a concern. Turn back now, or watch the jungle consume everything you hold dear." The hologram faded, and the sphere dissolved into dust. Rayan turned to her slowly. "Friend of yours?" "My half-brother," Alira said coldly. "He wants the seed stone destroyed, so no one can challenge his rule. He sent the plant, the tree beast, everything." Rayan stared into the jungle, then back at her. "And he knows you're still coming." "Yes," she said. "And now he's watching us." Rayan's jaw tightened. "Let him watch," he said. "Let him see what happens when you threaten someone a human decides to protect." Alira looked at him, truly looked, and something in her expression shifted. Not fear, not sadness, but belief. Not in herself, not yet, but in him. She stood, legs still trembling, but eyes bright. "We move at dawn," she said. Rayan nodded. "I'll keep the fire going." They didn't speak again that night, but something strong had settled between them. Not love, not yet, but loyalty, and in the jungle. That was more rare than safety. The jungle looked different now, not because the trees had changed, but because they were watching. Rayan could feel it. Every branch felt like an eye, every vine like a hand waiting to strike, and yet, Alira walked forward with quiet determination. Her steps no longer weak but fueled by something deeper. Rayan followed close behind, blade ready, scanning the shadows. The silence between them had grown shorter in the past hours, not because they had nothing to say, but because they understood each other better now. She led him to a narrow ridge above a long stretch of green fog. Down below, the forest floor disappeared into haze. Alira stopped at the edge and pointed to a broken statue rising from the vines. "It was here," she said. "The place where I first saw the seed stone." Rayan stepped beside her. "You've been here before?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice quiet. "I was young, not yet a scout. My brother brought me here on a secret mission. Before he was crowned. Before he turned into the thing he is now." Rayan looked at her closely. "You trusted him once." Alira nodded slowly. "I worshipped him," she said. "He was strong, clever, and he made me feel safe. But the seed stone changed everything." She stepped down toward the statue, brushing away the moss with her hands, revealing glowing carvings beneath. "He touched it first," she said, "and it showed him something he never spoke about. When I touched it," she continued, "I saw peace. I saw our world united, leaders speaking truth, no more lies, no more blood for power." Rayan crouched beside her. "So he saw something different. I think he saw himself losing everything," she said, "and that terrified him." Thunder rumbled softly above the trees. A light wind carried the scent of something burning. Though no fire could be seen, Rayan placed a hand on the stone. It was warm, pulsing, like a living heart buried beneath rock. "Whatever it is, your people were right to fear it," he said. "Truth has a way of destroying lies, and people build their whole empires on lies." Alira's eyes darkened. "My brother destroyed the old council the night after we returned from here. He claimed they were traitors, said they planned to sell our planet's resources to off-worlders. But I knew the truth." She looked at Rayan, her voice tight with emotion. "He wanted the seed stone buried forever. And anyone who had touched it gone with it." Rayan nodded. "And you were the last witness." Alira stepped back from the statue and looked out over the ridge. "We're close," she said. "The final chamber lies beneath the roots of the singing tree." Rayan raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, it doesn't actually sing." "It sings only once," she said. "When someone worthy enters the chamber. And if they're not worthy?" Rayan asked. Alira didn't answer. They descended the ridge slowly, moving through thick fog and twisted roots. The forest grew quieter, like it was holding its breath. The light shifted strangely, flickering as if time itself was bending around. Then, at last, they stood before a towering tree that pulsed with light, its bark like crystal, its leaves humming with faint vibrations. Rayan stepped forward but was stopped by Alira's hand on his chest. "This part," she said. "I must enter." "Alone?" He stared at her, unsure. "You sure you're ready?" "No," she admitted. "But I have to be." She walked slowly toward the base of the tree, where the roots opened like a gateway. As she stepped through, the forest began to hum, and the tree responded. A single haunting note rang out, soft, clear, ancient. Rayan stood back, listening. Then he heard something else, voices. Not from the tree, but from behind him. He turned fast, weapon drawn. Figures emerged from the fog, armored in silver-black plating, their helmets shaped like twisted animal skulls. They didn't speak, they didn't need to. Rayan knew what they were, Shadow Guard. Elite killers from Alira's brother's private army. And they weren't here to talk. Rayan stepped forward, eyes cold, blade pulsing with light. "She's not leaving with you," he said. The first soldier raised a rifle. But Rayan was already moving. He struck low, fast, cutting through armor and bone. The jungle lit up with flashes of plasma and sparks of metal. Inside the tree, Alira knelt before a glowing chamber, her hands shaking as she reached for the seed. Stone, behind her, the air shimmered, an image of her brother forming from smoke and memory. "You still believe truth can save you," the image whispered. She closed her eyes. "No," she said. "I believe in the one who pulled me from the mouth of death." Outside, Rayan stood over 3 broken bodies. His armor cracked, his breath sharp. He didn't know what was happening inside the tree. But he knew one thing: he'd hold the line. No matter what came next, the ground shook with each blast. Rayan's back pressed against a thick root as plasma fire tore past his shoulder. The last of the Shadow Guard weren't just soldiers, they were enhanced. Their movements unnaturally fast, their eyes glowing with cold blue fire. Rayan was bleeding, tired, low on energy cells, but he stood firm. He wasn't protecting just a person anymore. He was guarding a chance at peace, a promise buried under roots and blood. Inside the singing tree, time moved differently. Alira stood in a chamber made of pure light and memory, her hands hovering over the seed stone. It floated above a pool of silver water, pulsing with slow, deep rhythm, like the heartbeat of the world. But she wasn't alone. The image of her brother flickered again, more solid this time. He wasn't just watching, he was inside the crystal's echo, using their shared blood to speak through it. "Alira," he said, his voice calm and smooth like polished glass. "You've come so far, but this is where your journey ends." She didn't answer, she didn't flinch, but her fingers trembled. "Let it go," he continued. "Return home, and I will pardon your crimes. You'll have a place by my side again. You killed the council." She said without emotion, "You tried to erase everything that gave our people hope." "I gave them safety," he replied. "And you gave them lies about peace and honesty." Alira stepped forward, her boots touching the edge of the pool. "The seed stone doesn't lie," she said, "but you're afraid of it, because it forces the truth to the surface." "Truth is dangerous," her brother hissed. "So are you," she said, and touched the stone. The light exploded outward, filling the chamber. She screamed, not in pain, but in power. Visions rushed through her mind, past, present, and future. Worlds torn apart by war, planets healed by truth, her people kneeling, then rising. Outside, the singing tree pulsed once, and a shockwave burst through the air. Rayan stumbled, and the enemy paused, stunned by the sudden blast of energy. In that instant, Rayan moved, striking 2 soldiers before they could recover. The last one lunged at him, but Rayan caught the blade with his bare hands, forcing it aside. And with one final strike, silence returned to the jungle. Rayan dropped to one knee, breathing hard. His vision blurred. Blood dripped from a wound above his brow. But he stayed upright, watching the entrance of the tree. Then the light inside changed. It dimmed to a soft golden hue, and the air grew still. Alira stepped out slowly, her face glowing with something beyond strength, clarity. The seed stone floated behind her, a small fragment now resting in her hand. She looked at Rayan, and for the first time truly smiled. "You did it," he said, barely able to speak. "No," she replied. Kneeling beside him, "We did it." He looked at her, bloody and broken, but still somehow joking. "You sure your brother's not going to send a second wave?" Alira shook her head. "He can't," she said. "The seed stone spoke, and it spoke to everyone connected to our bloodline." "You mean he heard it too?" "He did," she said. "And he screamed." Rayan chuckled weakly. "I like your family," he said. "They're fun." She helped him stand, wrapping his arm over her shoulders. He didn't argue, even though every muscle in his body told him to collapse. They moved away from the tree, which slowly folded its roots closed behind them. The jungle, for the first time, was silent, not hiding, not hunting. It was listening as they walked. Alira looked at the shard in her hand. "With this," she said, I can show my people everything, what he did, what he feared, and what must change. And they'll believe you? Rayan asked. They won't have a choice, she answered. The truth won't let them lie anymore. He nodded slowly. Good, he said, because I'm way too tired to fight an army right now. She laughed softly, and they kept walking, behind them. Roots closed over the place that had nearly taken her life. Now it had given her something greater, truth. And beside her, the human who didn't run, who didn't hesitate, who fought monsters with nothing but a blade and stubborn courage. She looked at him with a mix of wonder and warmth. You know, she said, I think the seed stone showed me one more thing. Rayan glanced at her. Yeah? What's that? A future, she said, and in it, you're still with me. He smiled faintly. Then I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. The jungle finally exhaled. The starship hovered above the city like a silent god. Its hull reflected the golden light of the twin suns, casting long shadows over the capital below. Alira stood at the edge of the docking ramp, looking down at her homeworld for the first time in years. It didn't feel like home anymore. Rayan stood beside her, his coat still torn, his side still bandaged from the last fight, but he looked ready, calm, alert, always watching. Looks peaceful from up here, he said. It isn't. She replied quietly, not yet. The palace sat at the heart of the city, towering, sharp, made of polished black stone that shimmered like glass. Inside that palace was her brother, sitting on a throne built on silence and fear, but the seed stone shard in her hand pulsed, softly, as if it were ready to speak again. Are you sure they'll listen? Rayan asked. Alira nodded once. They won't have a choice. She walked forward, and the guards at the base of the ramp didn't stop her. They looked at her with wide eyes, not just because she had returned, but because they had felt the seed. Stone's power. It had whispered truths across the minds of everyone with veil-burned blood, and her brother's lies had begun to rot from the inside. The palace was quiet, too quiet. Not a place of strength anymore, but a place holding its breath. She stepped into the council chamber, Rayan just a step behind her, his fingers brushing his weapon, but not drawing it. There he sat, her brother, the high voice of the Veilburn. He looked older, not in age, but in burden. Truth had touched him, and truth never left clean. You returned, he said, voice hollow. You were supposed to die in the jungle, and you were supposed to rule with honor. Alira answered, but here we are. He stood, tall and still proud, but the fire in his eyes had dimmed. You bring a human into our sacred hall? He spat. Rayan raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Alira stepped forward and held up the seed stone shard. Let the stone speak, she said, and let this chamber finally hear what's been hidden. The shard glowed, brighter than ever, and its light spread like water, touching every wall. Visions filled the chamber, memories, facts, betrayals, and truth spoken in private now echoed in full light. The council watched, silent and pale, as the seed stone revealed what Alira's brother had done. The lies he told, the elders he executed, the monsters he created in the jungle to hunt her. Rayan watched it all without blinking. He wasn't shocked. He had seen men like this before. What amazed him was how calm Alira remained. When the light faded, no one moved. The silence was heavier than steel. Finally, the high voice sank into his throne, broken not by a weapon, but by truth. You've destroyed me, he whispered. No, Alira said softly. You destroyed yourself. She turned to the council. Let him live, but strip him of his title, she said. Let the seed stone stand here from now on, so no lie may ever grow roots in this chamber again. The council slowly nodded. One by one, and just like that, the age of deception ended. Rayan followed her back outside, blinking in the bright sunlight. You didn't kill him, he said. Alira shook her head. Truth was enough. They stood quietly on the palace steps, watching the crowd slowly gather. People whispered her name, Alira, the returned, the voice of the stone, the one who had walked through death and come back with the truth. Rayan looked at her. So what now? Alira glanced sideways at him, her eyes shining softly. I rebuild, she said. I teach them how to listen again. And me? He asked, half smiling. You, she said, stepping closer. You stay. The moment stretched between them, unspoken but understood. 2 worlds, 2 lives, joined by a single impossible choice, to care when it would have been easier to walk away. A breeze swept through the city, and far above them, in the sky, the clouds broke open just enough to let the light shine down. The jungle was far behind them now, but the market left would stay forever, not just as a scar, but as a seed, a human. And an alien, not just survivors, but something new, something the galaxy hadn't seen before, hope.